friends, welcome back to my quilt room. And if you're new here, I'm so glad to have you. Today I'm going to bring you a new method of how to join your blocks for Quilt As You Go. It's going to involve no sashing on the front. So your quilt's going to look like one piece on the front, and I'm really excited to show you that. And also I'm going to do a square and a square block. And for that I'm going to be using a layer cake. This is the Prim by Lori Holt for Riley Blake. So I hope you'll stay tuned and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I did was I took this out of the package, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to mix up the colors because as you see, it always has all the colors like grouped together, like all these pinks and then all the oranges, then the blues. And when we put this block together, I want it to be varied. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to like skim through it, and I'm just going to just like mix up the colors here, and just so they're not in order, because when I cut this up, we're going to put them back in piles. So I'll show you what I mean after I'm done. So let me do this real quick. So now I have them all mixed up. So what I'm going to do is to construct this block, I'm going to take like a pile of about 4, I think. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stack these. I should iron that real quick though. So it doesn't mess you up when you're cutting it. Okay, so now to construct this block, what we're going to do is we're going to take our stack, and these are 10-inch squares. So I'm going to cut 5 inches one side. So I'm going to cut this in half. Now I know that people always say, you know, when you have a layer cake, like how do you cut it? Do you take the paint edge, or do you take the inside, the outside? But what I usually do is I'll measure it, and I'm going to put another ruler over here to see where my 5-inch takes me. So that's a little short there. So I'm going to move this over. And that looks about right. So I'm going to cut right there. Okay, so I'm going to put aside that one. Now this stack, I'm going to cut another 5 inches off. So that looks about right. But again, I'm just going to check real quick. And I'm just going to move it down slightly. So it looks like the outside of the pinked edges is where my is where I should measure from. So we're going to put that one aside. And then out of this stack, we're going to cut 2.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this around, because the straight edge is much easier to read than the pinked edge. So I'm going to line this up with 2.5 inches. I'm going to line it up with this side and the bottom, because I know those are straight. And I'm going to cut, and that's 1, 2.5. Yep. Okay, so that's another pile. I don't know if, let me bring this down so you can see. So now we're going to bring this block over, this stack. And we want to cut this in half at 2.5 inches. Now our block is going to wind up with as 9 inches unfinished. So what you could do is, because this is a 10-inch, you could cut 1 inch off now, or you could just cut it in half and cut 1 inch off at the end. But I'm going to cut my 9 inches right from the beginning. So I'm going to cut 1 inch off. I'm going to line up my ruler with this straight edge and with the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to cut my 1 inch off. And now we're going to cut this 2.5 inches. Okay. Okay, so those are all our cuts. So now I'm going to go through my whole stack and I'm going to cut all these blocks, and then I'm just going to stack them up in my piles, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've gone through my whole 10-inch squares and I've made all my piles, all my cuts. So we are now ready to sew. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these piles and I'm just going to go to the machine and I'm going to sew them all together. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. Okay, so I have all my piles and I'm going to put these aside down here. I'll take my small piles, put them here, and then my 5-inch squares. Now, I have the same fabric on top of all of them, but I want to mix this up. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to take this top one, I'll put it on the bottom, and that's it, because I want to each square in a square is going to have the same outer strips, but the middle is going to be different. So I'm just going to take this one and we're going to work on the left and the right first. So I'm just going to take my 2 small squares, line that up, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to take the other side and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch there. Okay, so now you could do one of two things. You could just finger press this, or you could take it to the iron. But for right now, I'm just going to finger press this and use my seam roller because that seems to do a good enough job. And then I'm going to do the same with this side. Okay, so now I'm going to take my long strip and I'm going to sew that down. I'm going to line that up. And I'm going to sew that down. Okay, and then I'm going to take the other side. Line that up. And sew a 1/4 inch straight down. Okay, so there's our first block. Now I would take this to the iron and sew it, but I'm not going to do that until all my blocks are done. So I'm just going to take this, I'm just going to put it aside, and I'm going to continue with the next. And I'm going to do that till all my strips are sewn. So I will be right back after I do that. Okay, so I have all my blocks sewn together, and this is what it looks like. And if you're using a layer cake comes with 42 10-inch squares. So you could potentially get 42 blocks out of that. I did sew my whole layer cake together and I did get my 42 blocks. But will I use them all for this quilt? I don't know. I may just make a little throw and then use some for something else. You know, we'll see. We'll see what I come up with. But for right now, I'm going to show you how to take the block. Um, I ironed them all up, first of all, and then I'm going to show you how to sandwich this with our batting and our backing and how I quilted it. And then I'm going to show you how to put the blocks together with no sashing in the front, and then how to put the rows together using the same method. So let me bring you overhead and I'll show you what I'm going to do. Okay, so we have our pile of squares. Now, as I had said, I ironed all these down. And what I did was I measured um, most of my squares to see what the average measurement would be. Now, in the beginning, I said they should come out to 9 inches, but because I was using a layer cake, my layer cake did not have exact 10 inches for every single block. So mine came out a little shorter. So what I did was I just trimmed mine down to 8.5. But I'm going to give you the dimensions, no matter how big your block is. Um, I'm going to give you the formula to make to cut your batting and your backing and to make your block. So given that, mine is 8.5. Now what you want to do is you want to take your top piece and you want to cut your backing the same size. So I have 8.5 top and 8.5 backing. Now my batting is going to be 1 inch shorter. So my batting is 7.5. So this is how we're going to sandwich this. I'm going to take my back piece and I'm going to lay that down with the right side facing down because that's our outside. Then I'm going to take my batting, which is 7.5, and I'm going to center it on top of my backing. And you can just estimate where the center is. It doesn't have to be perfectly exact, but you want to make sure you try to get it even as much as you can. And then you're going to take your top piece and you're going to line that up with your backing. So my top and my backing are the same, and then I have my batting in between. And I'm going to hold this together, I'm going to spray baste it. You could pin it, you could do nothing and just take it to the machine like this, but I want to make sure that this is not going to move on me. So I'm just going to take some spray, and I don't need a lot. I just want to hold it together. And I'm not going to push on this. I just want to sort of press down because I don't want to disturb my little sandwich here. And then I'm going to again, I'm just going to pat that down. Do a little over here. Okay. So that's our little sandwich. So I'll show you another one. So we're going to take our backing, put the right side down. This was really light, so it's hard to tell. But we're going to put that right side down. Take our batting. Again, you want this to be 1 inch shorter than your top piece. Lay that in there and just center it the best you can. And then take our topper and line this up. Okay. And then I'm going to just put a little basting spray. Just a little to hold it together so I can take them to the machine and sew it. Again, I'm just going to pat it down because I don't want to really move my two pieces. Okay, so now I'm going to take these to the machine. I'm going to do all the rest of them. I'm going to take this to the machine, and how I'm going to quilt this is I'm going to stitch in the ditch all around the square, and then I'm going to make an X, and that's where all we're going to do for this part, because when we put these together, we're going to be sewing on the edges here, and then we're also going to be top stitching our piece on the back. So it's going to give us another line of sewing here and all around. So I'll show you that when we get to it. But for now, let's go to the sewing machine and I'll show you how I'm going to quilt this. Okay, so I have my little sandwich, and what I'm going to do is I have my stitch in the ditch foot on, and basically I'm going to stitch in the ditch all the way around, and then I'm going to go in an X right here. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. So let me put my presser foot down. And if you have a stitch in the ditch foot, there's a wider opening on that foot. And so you could see exactly where you're sitting, where your needle's going to hit. So I'm going to start in that top upper corner. And I'm going to take a few stitches, and I'm going to back stitch because we are not really stitching over this. So I want to make sure that stitch is locked in there. And I'm just going to stitch to that next corner, and I'm going to lift my foot. My needle's staying down. I'm going to lift my foot, and I'm just going to pivot so I don't have to keep taking this out. And I'm going to go down the next side. And just take your time. And if you go over one, you can always go back one. Okay, and then I'm going to pivot again, go down the next side. And just take your time and look for your edge. Okay, so I'm right at the end. I've gone all the way around. And basically what I'm going to do now is just lift my foot, pivot, and then I'm going to come down the center. Now, I did not mark my X. You can do that if you wish, but I just sort of guesstimated where my corners were. So now at this point, I have one more line to do this way, but I've gone all the way around. So you could either backstitch and cut your thread and then do the next, but I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm just going to lift this and go down the ditch, the same ditch I went on this side. It's a lazy way of doing it, but you're in the ditch, so you're not going to be able to really tell. I'm just going to hit that corner, and now I'm going to go down the next X. So it's kind of a cheater's way of doing it, but it'll save you from cutting a lot of threads too. And then once I reach that end, I'm going to backstitch. Cut my thread and then take it out. So there is my stitch in the ditch and my X. And that's how I'm quilting all of mine. So I'm going to do the next one. So again, I'm going to start up in that upper corner, find out where that top corner is. Put my foot down, backstitch, and then go all the way around. Now I'm going to go do my X. and then back stitch. And there we have it. Another one done. So I'm going to do that with all my blocks, and then I'll meet you back at my table. Okay, so I have all my blocks quilted, and what I did was I took them and put them up on my design wall and just arranged them how I wanted them to look. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we're going to start joining these. Now, the method I'm going to show you, I learned from Pattern Pool, and it's called the Easy Cover Strip Method. And I will link a video below to her site, and you can watch her video. So I'm going to bring you overhead, and I'm going to show you how we're going to put these together. Okay, so how we're going to join our blocks is, first thing we want to do is to create our cover strips for the back. So what you want to do is you want to cut a 2-inch strip, the length of your block, and we're going to make like a almost like a seam binding. So what I did was I took my ruler and I measured 1 inch in. I just drew a line, and then I folded in the one side, ironed that down, and then folded in the other side and ironed that. So we're basically making like a seam binding. And this is what it should look like when you're done. And these are going to be our cover strips for the back. So if your block is 8.5, you want to cut your strips at 8.5. If your block is 9, you want to cut them at 9. So whatever your block dimension is, that's how long you want your strip. So I'm going to put that aside because first we're going to sew our blocks. So let's take 2 blocks, and what you want to do is you want to, when you're laying out your blocks, you don't want to have to nest seams. So whatever strip you have on this side, so this is the long strip and this is the short one, you want to make sure those are together, because if you do it this way and you put your short strips, you'll have to nest those seams when you sew them. So just alternate them as you go. If this is a long strip, then put a short strip. If this is a short strip, you want to put a long strip next to it. Hopefully that makes sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 of our blocks, put them together, match up our seams, and we're going to stitch down 3/8 of an inch, not a 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch, which is basically 1/8 over a 1/4. So let's go to the machine and I'll show you how we're going to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew 3/8 of an inch on our blocks, joining our blocks together. So now, where's your 3/8 inch? This is how I found mine. I took my seam guide and let me see if that focuses. Okay. And what I did was I counted over 3/8. Now depending on what ruler you're using, this particular one is for every inch, there is 1/8. There's 8/8. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the end is 8. So I just counted over 1, 2, 3, and I moved my seam guide right up to that. And then what I did was I took this, I put my needle down, and I just butted this right up against my needle, and then found a marking on my machine that sort of coincided with that seam guide. And for me, it was this line right here, this number 10. I have a Juki, so the way they're set up is the US measurements are in the back and the centimeters are in the front. But this happened to coincide with this number 10 right here. So all I did was I took my a seam guide that I had, and I just sort of put it right on that 10 mark, and then I just ran my fabric right up against that. So I'm going to sew this down 3/8 of an inch. Let me put my needle back up first. Okay. Okay, so there is our block all sewn down. So now I'm going to go to the table and I'm going to show you how we're going to join the back. Okay, so our blocks are sewn down and here's the back. And what we're going to do is we are going to iron this open instead of to the one side. And this will create a lot less bulk because we're going to put this on top. So we want to eliminate as much bulk as we can. So let me iron that down real quick. And I'm going to iron this open. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our ruler and we're going to measure from the seam right here in the middle. We're going to measure 1 inch over. And we're going to mark that. And I'm marking it with my friction pen. This will iron out because it's erases in heat. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Measure 1 inch over. And this is basically just a guide to show us where to put our strip. Okay, so it looks like that. Now we're going to take our strip and we're going to lay that on top right along those lines. Right there. Now you can attach this a couple different ways. You could put pins in there, or you can use some glue, which is basically what I'm going to do because I want to make sure that that stays down. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue right down the middle here. And I'm just going to make sure that that just holds. And then I'm just going to hit it with some heat so it stays. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch on both sides, just about 1/8 of an inch in. And that's going to show right here on the front. And that will also guarantee that it's going to hold these blocks, you know, the batting inside here too. So I'm going to take that to the machine and I'm going to stitch that down and I'll be right back. Okay, so what I'm going to do to sew this down is I'm going to use my stitch in the ditch foot, which I use quite often for things like this. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this in here. Sorry, I don't want to put my arm in the way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the edge of my cover strip right against the little bar in my stitch in the ditch foot. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my needle over to where I'm going to stitch just about 1/8 over. So I'm just going to move my needle to where I think that would cover it. So let's see, maybe a little bit more. So right about there. And then I'm going to stitch that down. Okay, now I'm only doing 2 blocks, so I could technically just flip this and do the other side. But when you start adding blocks on, what I would do is to move my needle back over and then stitch the other side. But for right now, I'm just going to flip this and I'm going to put this under and then sew this straight down. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Hopefully you can see that. It's about 1/8 of an inch on both sides. So that's what we're going to do to all our strips. So that was our first block down, and this is the front, and you could see the stitching on both sides, which I think looks really nice also. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, not much to trim really. Actually not much at all here. So I'm just going to leave it for right now. And I'm going to add the rest of my blocks on. And when I get 2 rows done, then I'm going to show you how to attach the rows. So I'll be right back after I do that. Okay, so we have our 2 rows sewn together. And they all have their strips on the back. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take this top row and we're going to sew it to our second row. And this is where you'll have to nest your seams. So you want to line up the seams between each block. And remember, we opened our seams, so you just want to make sure that they are matching. Okay. And if you want to double check, you can always just open this up and you can see where they're joining, where they're coming together. So I'm going to go to the machine and sew this 3/8 inch all the way down. Okay, so we have our 2 rows sewn down. Here's the back. And we're going to iron that open, but here's the front. Everything matches up nicely. So I'm just going to open that seam and iron it down. And then we're going to put our cover strip on. Okay, so that's ironed down. And now we're going to take our ruler like we did before, and we're going to measure a 1/2 inch from that seam line. And we're going to make our mark. Okay, and then we're going to put our cover strip on. So I'm going to put my dots of glue. And then I'm going to heat set this. Okay, so our cover strip is down. And as you can see, the pen is already erased just from that heat. So I'm going to top stitch this on both sides all the way down, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here are the two rows all sewn together. I think that came out so nice. And then here's the back. Our strips are going this way and this way. And the front looks like just one piece, and I absolutely love it. I really like this technique. So I hope you give it a try. It looks really, really nice. I like the back too. So I hope you enjoyed this method of the cover strip. And again, here's the back, and then here's the front. And it looks like it's all one piece, which I really, really love. I love this method, and I hope you give it a try. And of course, I have a few more rows to put together, but I just really love this method. So if you found this video helpful, I hope you give it a thumbs up, and I hope you subscribe and hit that bell for notifications for when my next video comes out. And as always, happy sewing and sew something happy.